the value for value model, I think, is the future of media and just being able to support the people that are doing it right, as opposed to being stuck with these dinosaurs of media. So without further ado, I would like to, you ready, Adam? All right. Introduce the Podfather.
Hey,
thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Sure. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jason. Hey, how you all doing? I heard at least 3 no agenda in the mornings over there. We got something in here. My voice is a little tired. I just came back from 3 days in Dallas, something I rarely ever do, at the podcast movement conference. For those of you who heard about the controversy there this year, I survived the Ben Shapiro massacre. I am alive. For those who don't know what happened, it's actually interesting because this was a meltdown of a fiat institution. It was fiat as fuck there. Very disappointing for me. And it's important to know because corporations are under capture. They are capturing institutions. I think everyone knows about ESG, environmental social governance. You've probably heard a lot of that, maybe even in regards to Bitcoin. This is a new metric that corporations, certainly public corporations, are being held to certain standards for their involvement, their stakeholder capital, basically their virtue signaling in environmental, social, and governance issues, which is green energy, LGBTQIAPK+, BIPOC. Actually, it's now just BIPOC, in this case, a podcast movement. I'll explain why. And then, of course, governance, which basically means women. Or no men, let's put it that way. It was really, they had quotas for how many white guys could be on stage. It was really ridiculous. But the problem was they had, well, so what this conference has become after Gary sold it very wisely, what has become is big corporations trying to check off these ESG boxes by finding podcasts to advertise on that are about green energy, are about BIPOC issues specifically, and women, anything but men. And so they have 1,000 consultants at this thing, just running around trying to find people. And so this money is just a whole fiat piece of shit, and no one's even listening to these podcasts. So there's really no advertising money that's going to what we see as, oh, podcasting, we can make so much money with advertising, inserted ads. No. And I've had quite a journey in the past 2 years as I've rediscovered Bitcoin and discovered the Lightning Network. I've come to a place in my life now at 58 next week where I'm living the new international lifestyle, which I call value for value. So what is value for value? It's a monetization model, a content format, and a way of life. And the monetization model is really interesting when you take it from the fiat world and then bring it into the digital world. We did that with podcasting, and it really is a great way for people to understand the value of Bitcoin, the value of their own time, and how they value things in general. The Silicon Valley model of valuing media is, you work for us, you give us the content, we make the money, fuck you, you get nothing. That's the basic model of Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. Now, of course, you can monetize in some ways on YouTube if you play by the rules, because advertising and sponsorship is basically censorship, even if it's just not being allowed to talk about the competing product. And you have to be brand safe for everything, otherwise you'll never make it. So we needed a new way to value content outside of this is my favorite example. Silicon Valley decided every song is 99 cents if you want to buy it. Who made it up? Steve Jobs, arguably. If you ask me, the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand, which I think is one of the best love songs ever written, it's 99 cents. Shit, man, I'll pay $99 every single time I get to play that loud. But I'm never asked. I'm forced into a path. This thing is turned into a content format, which means you can actually base your media around it and integrate this monetization model, this way to make money, this way to receive value for the value you've given in a very effective way. So podcasting really flipped the scarcity-based economy of radio broadcasting on its head. We used to have only radio stations. Their airwaves were either owned by the government or leased by the government to corporations. That's still done that way, which means they have exclusive access, which means they have walled gardens, they have the guardrails, they are the gatekeepers. They get to determine, they get to price things because they create scarcity, and it's also on a regular 60-minute clock, so you can't really do more at one time. It's linear. Podcasting, of course, changed that by going from a economy of scarcity to one of abundance. Now we had, at this point, over 4 million podcasts. So you'd really think that the ad rates would come down to almost zero, and they have for everybody except for the aforementioned groups. It also really messed with the linear nature of radio. Now you could listen to your favorite radio program or something like it at any time you want at your convenience. So it really changed how we value our time. It's like, I can do something else in the morning if I can listen to this podcast at a different time, or I can determine when I want to listen to podcasts. I got something extra. So in Bitcoin, we know about your time and your value preference. It kind of matches a little bit with podcasting. These are mine, actually. I find sleep very valuable. Educational content I value pretty high. Entertainment, usually low. Sometimes it can be high, but drive time, man, when I'm in the car, I can do two things. All of a sudden, I have all this extra time that's incredibly valuable, this medium that we've created. So let me tell you where value for value comes from. After I invented podcasting with Dave Weiner in 2006, Steve Jobs called me and said, Adam, I want to put podcasting into iTunes and on the iPod, is that okay? And I went, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do that. It's a good idea. And he actually reciprocated. He hooked me up with some venture capital guys. Actually, Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia. It was really exciting to meet all these big VC people. And we're talking now 2006. And he helped me get meetings, and we set up a podcast network. I really thought that, and Steve Jobs agreed with me at the time, I thought that advertising would work. I thought, this is going to be great. We'll change advertising. We'll make it a little different than what they're used to. Well, we raised $65 million, failed really spectacularly, didn't really ever complete that mission. And that's mainly because YouTube came out and they controlled pretty much, podcasting was even suppressed until people had been binging Breaking Bad for days and days on end, and then this podcast called Serial came out, which was a great idea. It was true crime, but you couldn't listen, you couldn't binge it. You had to wait for the next episode next week. People were like, holy shit, oh my God, I can't wait. So it ignited something, and then people got into podcasts. So when we started, we knew that we could not do advertising. And this is 15 years ago when John C. Dvorak and I started No Agenda. It was just two dudes who were deconstructing media. Actually, I was in London at the time. He was in San Francisco. We knew that we couldn't do advertising because we could never talk about the things we're going to talk about that would be brand safe or brand friendly or brand appropriate or any of that. So we decided to ask people, after it became a little bit of work for us, hey, you should pay us. And we said, why don't you do $5 a month? And considering that in any of these models, really only 4% of your audience will take action, $5 a month from 4% of the audience at the time was very disappointing. It wasn't going to make it work for us. And we said, and we were very open with the audience we had at the time, we said, that's not going to work. Do you actually value this at all? Send us whatever you think the show is worth. The next show, we got a lot of people, $5. We got a lot of people sending $50, and some people sending $500 from one ask. I'm like, oh, okay, we never look back. This is something new. What is going on here? And it turns out, if you ask people to value what you're giving them at that very moment, an example would be, you've been listening to this show for 2 hours. My wife is actually a semi-retired communications professional, and she just retired from Chief Communications Officer at Ronald McDonald House Charities here in Central Texas in Austin, which you should support, by the way, if you live in Austin, because a lot of new families coming in, they'll need the help. And she said to me, the number one reason why people don't donate to a charity, they weren't every single day in some place around the world, multiple meetups, all arranged by the audience. And we called this value for value. So what are you doing for the value you get out of the show? I put up your website. What are you doing? I sent you $5. What are you doing? I sent you 10,000. It happens. So we talked about the ask. The most important part of this model, which is where really the media content format comes in, is acknowledge. So instead of ad breaks, we'll take the top financial supporters, $200 or above, $200 to $300, you become an associate executive producer, just like those fucks in Hollywood. You can look it up on IMDb. There's a lot of big names who have a no agenda credit. $300 or above, you're an executive producer. You aggregate over 12, over any time you make $1,000 in total, you become a knight. Why should the queen get to do that? You get a knight ring, you get a signet ring with sealing wax, the whole deal. And people love it, and it's become it's a very organically gamified system, but that feedback loop, we literally will thank people, tell everyone how much it was, and read their note. And the note is often another piece of wonderful content that someone just wants to share. We can redact if we want to, but you add in the fact that they're paying you. It's a great fucking system. 15 years, it's been working very, very well. So a little history. A little over 2 years ago, and I'd just been doing the show with John. I really kind of dropped out of the podcasting industry. Now we know why. And something really weird happened. Apple had basically become the central index of all podcasts. And every independent podcast app was tied into their database because it turns out to be kind of hard. Takes a lot of horsepower, crunching power to aggregate 4 million podcast feeds, when they're updated. It's a lot of work, and my buddy Dave Jones and I, we have a lot of 10 years of experience basically in messing around with feed aggregation. And Apple decided to, even though they've been great stewards of podcasting for 10 or 15 years, they decided to deplatform some podcasts. And it's irrelevant which ones they were. The interesting thing was when they removed it from Apple's podcast app, it fell away from all of the podcast apps because they've become kind of the centralized place. Where it used to be podcasting, all you need is a web server, an MP3 file, an RSS feed, which is just a text file that tells an app what to do with it, and that's all you need. You didn't need permission from anybody. Now all of a sudden, you couldn't be in any apps. And I said, all right, stop, this has to change. So I called my buddy Dave up. I said, let's take this away from Apple. We'll build an independent index. We did. It's called podcastindex.org. And we'll offer a free API. And any software developer who wants to do anything can come right in. And let's have a good time. We're going to do it value for value, which means we fund it from our own pocket. We have a podcast called Podcasting 2.0. It's kind of the board meeting of the project. And we solicit value for value donations. It's running perfectly fine. Added to that there was financial deplatforming going on. This is really evil stuff. So if you can't participate in advertising and you have PayPal or Patreon and someone complains about you to the right people, done. And this is happening to all kinds of businesses. We all know this probably in this room. So I thought, how can we make something that is just as immutable as the index for the payment system? And I'd been told I needed to check. Actually, it was Dennis Parker, Dutch Bitcoin consultant, said you should look at Lightning. So I'm looking at Lightning. They get me a Raspberry Pi, build a Blitz. I look at LSATs, LNURL Pay, and then I see Lightning. I said, oh man, I can actually broadcast money over this network. I don't need permission to send money to someone. If their node is not online, they may not receive it, but I can send it to someone without permission. That's almost exactly the same as broadcasting, so I understand this. So we built a system called streaming value for value. So every minute you can determine you send an X amount of sats to the podcast that you're listening to. And the default, I think, is 50. I do about 200 sats a minute. And that's just, you can change it per podcast. I want to send a little bit more. And so literally in real time, I'm getting MP3 bits in. I'm sending value back at the same time. Beautiful. Then we added the boost functionality and the boostograms, which is, you can almost say it's like YouTube Super Chat, because you can be listening right in the app. This is a great moment. hit 1,000 sats, confetti spews, the money goes off. You want to send more, I want to send a message, hold it down, you get to type in a message, and that all shows up on the podcaster's end. We added to that the ability to split these payments at the podcaster end. So if you have a producer, a co-host, you borrowed money from your mom for the studio, a promoter, you can give everybody, you can say this Lightning address gets 50%, this Lightning address gets 30%, etc. And it's no one's in between, it's direct from the listener to the podcaster. Another part of this is we wanted to help the software developers. Are any software developers here? Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, let's hear it for the software developers, please. So you guys, you were getting screwed all these years. Surprise. You weren't in the deal flow. You weren't in the Rogan deal flow if you made a podcast app. You didn't get any of that ad money. No, you had to give it away for free, beg people for $2.99 premium features, or do advertising or track people and do other creepy shit. It's for love. So we made it so that now when you're using an app, let's say you use Fountain or Podverse or CurioCaster, there's 58 apps and services now using this protocol. The Apple site right there. This is a free app. We suggest 3% of each transaction. That would be value for us. It'll be added on top. Your podcaster still gets what they want. If you want to do 3%, 2%, 1%, 0%, up to you. If you're not giving us anything, please ask yourself why you're using our app. It clearly has no value to you. The end result is everybody gladly gives 3, 4, 5% to the app they're using. Finally, software has a way to make money in these things. Very exciting. And what it does is it puts you, the listener, at the center of the market. You know, no longer are you fighting with Silicon Valley's pricing or whatever fiat systems are hovering around taking your money. I mean, you give something to any Silicon Valley, to anything connected to Silicon Valley, they take 30%. I mean, it's a fucking ripoff. So you get to be the determiner of what is valuable to you, and you get to reward and send value back based on your terms, whenever you want or don't want. So this kind of brings me to where I see it as a lifestyle. It's these parallel systems. So we have that shit show up in Dallas where people are shoving money into places that is just virtue signaling, makes no sense, doesn't help the industry at all. We've built, that's actually a link. I don't know if you can hit that peer nodes link for me, because you can see the Lightning Network of Podcasting 2.0. If you go to gopodcasting.org, you'll see it. It's a phenomenal network that is part of the Lightning Network, but we've kind of strung everything together with zero-base fees, made it easy for microtransactions to go back and forth, these little pieces of value payments that people are sending to podcasters and the splits that they have in there. So I think we need to be able to do this kind of value for value, not necessarily open-ended pricing, but this is a great way to onboard people, because I have this Bitcoin, this little, I get some, maybe I bought some through Cash App, put it into my podcast wallet. I kind of know what that's worth to me. And it makes people think about value. What am I really doing? People think, not for 2 seconds, about a $5 Starbucks. I got to pay for an app? To send money to a podcast? No. So now they're really starting to get an understanding for the value. And I think with this comes, as Jason was saying, physicality, people who understand Bitcoin or really understand the value for value in podcasting, they tend to hook up very easily. So podcasting is one parallel system, which happens to be probably the one literal free speech avenue left, probably one of the last ones. And it's mainly about speech, so it is a freedom of speech that you can do because no one can stop it, and they haven't been able to capture it for almost 20 years. So now we see the lifestyle coming together. We have a big food problem in the world. You've seen what's going on in the Netherlands. You saw what happened in Sri Lanka. It's all ESG driven, strangely enough. Really, the idea is you should not be eating beef. That's really what it comes down to. Mainly, you should eat bugs. I saw a great story yesterday that's controversy over windmills. I'm not against wind and solar as long as you got some Bitcoin miners there to regulate your grid. It'll be good. Yes. crazy to me that no one sees how obvious that is. The windmills, you know, these blades break, they have an 8-year life cycle. There was literally a report on ABC the other day. Don't worry about the carbon that went into making those windmill blades. Don't worry about it when they break, because we figured out a way to turn them into gummy bears. So you'll be eating bugs and windmills. It's like, what? So Texas fed the country several times after wars, mainly, with our beef. And you know, when you debase the currency, eventually you're going to debase your food, and we're there. Just look at all the genetically engineered, bioengineered food ingredients that you have in your food. They literally are putting cricket powder now into products, and they put it on, you know, it has different names. But when I hooked up with Texas Slim, you may have seen him around. Yeah. It was actually Marty Bent, who will be on right after this. Marty said, Adam, you got to listen to this guy. I'm like, oh, this is a cowboy. Look at this guy. He's great. And he truly is a cowboy. After breaking, you know, every bone in his body, breaking his neck, he tried to slow down a little bit on the rodeo circuit. And he said, wow, we have such a problem with food and with particularly children. 47% of American children are obese. 1 in 2 will get diabetes. And what is going on? Well, it's really education, of course, about the food that we're eating, but our beef that we make here in Texas is not what you buy in HEB. That's being shipped off to China. That's being sold as luxury, fantastic product, which it is. We're getting stuff that's either coming from Australia. There's a cattle drive that happens every year. It happens in South America. They drive these cattle all the way up, and then they're eventually processed by only 4 of the big ones, JBS, Cargill, I forget the other 2 criminals. And so really the rancher is disconnected from the whole supply, certainly disconnected from the consumer. And so Slim's a rancher. He says, and this is actually how he sold me on the idea. I said, Adam, I'm 6th generation rancher. Let me show you this picture. This is my great-grandparents. What do you see? I said, well, the clothes are a little outdated, but they look pretty good. He said, look at how they look. They look healthy. They're strong because they ate beef. Go to Houston now. Just walk on the street. Go to Dallas, just walk on the street. Austin's going to get there too. So we're becoming obese, and it's because our food has literally been debased. You can get ground beef at HEB, and if you do a DNA test, there could be 2,000 different animals in that ground beef. TexasBeefInitiative.com. So what Slim did, thanks to Marty and the OSHI app, he said, we're going to use that. Was that for Marty or OSHI? OSHI. Marty, okay. We're going to take that connection, that thing that we have with Bitcoin, and we're going to use that to connect people to ranchers. So Slim has been out there saying, hey, look, ranchers have proof of work, just like Bitcoin. So let's take our proof of work, exchange it for your proof of work, and now they just got their full first coin over at K&C Cattle in Austin, and they're spreading out to Tennessee, to Colorado. We're going to be in Georgia in September. There's still a couple of tickets available for that if you want to support the Beef Initiative. Fantastic. This is the way. This is the new international lifestyle. You meet the rancher, you meet the cows. He tells you how it works. Then when you go home, you take a quarter, a half, whatever, how much of a cow you want. It's all cut up nicely. You get your freezer, put it next to your S19s, you're good to go. I only have S9s, but they are in the same room. So the slog, or what I think we need to do to build out this international lifestyle. So Slim is doing food intelligence. Me and Dave and everyone at Podcasting 2.0, protecting and enhancing it to make it better, make the payment system better, everything we can do to enhance it with features. I think schooling can be done in a value-for-value manner with Bitcoin as a common system. I had this on my slide, this concierge or telemedicine. So the crowd health guys are here. They have a very similar story. They're using Bitcoin and Bitcoiners to crowdsource for health insurance, which I think is a really interesting idea. And I'm all in. I would really love to try that. So I guess the question is, you here today, what's your role in all of this? Can we all start to live this way? What else can we do to build these parallel systems? Because I don't think we can change stuff politically that easily right now. It's very good that we see school boards, city councils, and that, by the way, is, as I said, I'm almost 58. That's my fault. In the 80s and 90s, we were like party, making money, rock and roll. I was at MTV. School board for some loser who couldn't figure out a better gig, obviously. And then we grow up, it's like, fuck, what happened? So we need to be local, and support your neighbors who may want to run for something small and local. That's what it really comes down to. So whenever you're thinking about what can be done with Bitcoin and this understanding that we have together as Bitcoiners, that may be your role in what I think is the new international lifestyle. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions? I guess we have time for a few if anyone has one. I love the standing ovation, but no questions? I will be around. Oh, you have a question? Okay. Sure, man.
I know you were on with Rogan, who I really like listening to, and I feel like he's on the verge of being a Bitcoiner, but just he doesn't know it yet. And so I was just wondering, obviously you were on the show.
Yeah.
You probably are at least acquaintances, potentially friends. When can we get Safe on there, or Sailor, or Bhatia, or someone, or even you again to talk more about Bitcoin?
Thank you for asking this question, because I've been on Joe's show 4 times now, actually 3. The second time we both got so high that I don't want anyone to watch that episode. I brought him to Austin. He wanted to go to Dallas, and no, come to Austin. And then I moved out to Fredericksburg. Good luck. So every single time I've been on Joe Rogan Experience, I always bring up Bitcoin one way or the other, and in my own way, I'm trying to orange pill him. There's 2 things I'll say about it. One, it's very interesting how after an appearance, this is the typical Bitcoin comment. Hey man, you should get that person on, God, you didn't do it right, where's this guy? A little bit like you asked, but just in a different tone of voice. Sorry about that, sound engineer. As we all know, you have to figure out Bitcoin yourself. You have to. And so I've just been giving Joe little pieces, and the last time I was on, something really strange, but something really big worked for him. And I said, and he said, well, it seems like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the 2 big ones. I said, look, Joe, here's the main difference. Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO. And that got him to a place. I understand. I'd love to see Saifedean on Rogan. Sailor, be fantastic. Nobody controls what Joe does. I have to say, pretty based what he did with Zuckerberg. I think that was pretty important, just to see how these fiat systems run and how they're intertwined with government intel agencies. Joe is going to get there. You just have to give him the time. He is actually very, very careful. And honestly, I don't know if he even gets it yet. But when he does, we'll all know. It's not a matter of forcing it on him. He has to do the work himself. And if he's not interested, then he'll never get it. But he is one of the smartest guys I know. So he may be holding back. I don't know. Maybe he's ready for the for the ETH staking thing. Who the hell knows what he's doing? I hope not. So I hope that answers your question.
In the morning?
In the morning to you.
Speaking of one of the smartest guys, that doesn't get Bitcoin, your co-host, John C. Dvorak. I mean, I love the guy. I really do. He just seems to think still like government should print a little bit of money to maintain the economy, and he still seems to me like he's kind of in that boat. I know a lot of people that are just kind of in the retirement era and it's just not for them. Do you see him coming around at all?
That's a great question. People who know what that means. And I've talked to John about this, of course, because I would love nothing more than to really go head on with Bitcoin donations. We'll take pretty much anything: PayPal, cash, bank transfer, gold coins, pretty much anything except for that. And John is a bit older than I am. You're right, he's actually past the retirement age, still going strong. We thank God for that. There's two things at play here. One, yes, he is very afraid of the tax situation because it's a little more complicated in his mind, receiving donations. We have a veto. It's just the two of us. If one of them throws the veto, the other one respects it. But it doesn't mean it can't keep trying. And in fact, on the show the other day, I said, buy 1 Bitcoin, I'll cover your loss. I'll cover your loss. He didn't do it. The second problem is he missed out. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, and he feels so stupid. And this is what I work on. It's like, come on, man. This is another chance. You can get in pretty much any time you want. So I will continue to try. We have a fair, one-on-one veto. If he doesn't want it, then we just won't do it. But I think I'm getting closer. I'm cracking a little bit. I would love to see that, obviously. All my other podcasts, we don't even accept fiat. It's just go straight for value on Lightning. Anybody else?
And then get him on beef instead of yak balls.
I'll get him on beef instead of yak balls. That's very baffling to me. Just say no to yak balls. Yes, sir.
So right now, you talked about millions of podcasts that exist. And those that operate in a value-for-value model are a minority.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a small minority.
10,000.
10,000. Do you ever see, what's the path? I mean, you'd be the one to have a good idea about this, right? What's the path to more going value for value? Or in years from now, will it still just be like a way to discipline the market, if you will, and protect free speech? So in other words, it can always be an option, or will it become the option?
Well, so here's the beautiful thing about this model. In a way, it's like OnlyFans. If you can get 1,000 people, I'm being honest, if you can get 1,000 people to support you because you ask them and you have this feedback loop, if they can support you with $50 over a year, of course, it'll be an average because you're telling people it's open. Everybody I know says after 1 week, I already knew I was going to make more than I would make in advertising. We're going to do it for music too, by the way. We're going to do it for films. We're going to do it for documentaries. It'll be the exact same thing, the exact same distribution model. And we have, I think, maybe 30 people now doing value for value music. If you go to curiocaster.com, you can see an example of it. The people who put their stuff up there already said, oh, I get much more here than from Spotify. And you help build your community. And we're building into these apps all these different ways, cross-app comments, etc. So to answer your question, and this is the hardest thing, I haven't figured out how to communicate properly yet. Number one, doesn't fucking matter anymore. It's always going to be Cardi B or someone else. It's always going to, that's the fiat world. That's fiat thinking. It's about proof of work. People listen, they get value out of it. So you need to build just a community of people who are interested. You don't need to be on a chart. You just need to get those people who care about what you're doing and send you value back. And what I'm seeing is, so here's a little no agenda kind of value for value cloud that overlaps a little bit with Tales from the Crypt, it overlaps with Rogan, and this is how it grows. People start to talk to other people, just the way you find out about other podcasts. People say, you should really try this 2.0 thing. You should try newpodcastapps.com. You can look at all of them. And then some listeners will tell their podcasters, you need to go and do this because it's a new way to support you. It's a heavy lift. It's going to take a while before people catch on to it, but it really doesn't matter to me. If there's 10,000 podcasts now, that's easily 1 million people who are participating right now in value for value. There's probably about 3 million, about 80, let me see if I can do it right. I think it's like 8 million sats a day just flying around on a couple of these apps with these podcasts, and sometimes much more. So getting out of the fiat mindset of everybody has to do it, it's not important. I don't care if Apple does it. I don't care if Spotify, the fiat company by example, I don't care if they do it. I care about the people in my community of interest, community of geographic location, that they're supporting me. And that's the same with OnlyFans. You know, you can make $10 million a year if you have 1,000 OnlyFans and you take your pants off. I mean, that's the next step you have to do. But the point is, it works. It really works, and you don't have to be number one. We don't have to be the biggest. We don't have to be on the charts. It makes no difference. I'm not making millions with my podcast, but for 15 years, paid our rent, we have nice houses, we got a new car, our kids have been through school, we love what we do, and the people who work with us, the producers, love that we do it, and they love that they participate. So, please join me, the new international lifestyle. Thank you very much.